Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the fourth episode of the Consumer Social Podcast, the show where we talk with builders in the consumer social space about their successes, learnings, and failures. Today, we're here with Jibran. Jibran, thank you so much for coming. Why don't you start by introducing yourself? Who are you? What have you been up to?
Yeah, for sure. My name is Jibran. I just graduated from the University of Texas, and I'm in New York right now. And I really love building social consumer apps. I think like over the past couple of years, I've touched almost or like a lot of different aspects of the field, like voice, live video, photos, anonymous, location. I really enjoy just exploring all these different subsections of social and like trying to build something that connects a lot of people, basically.
Amazing, thank you. I actually didn't know you had covered so many areas. What different apps was it? Was it just prototypes, different apps that you've built and launched? What is the story
Oh no,
behind
yeah.
covering all of those
Mhm.
bases?
I mean, these are all apps that I've launched. So some of them are more like earlier on in my career, like in high school, like I built like an anonymous social network. So some of the more recent apps I've built, like I haven't been as public about them. I'm following more of a model, just like launch as many things as possible and like build in private, kind of not build in private, but more like I don't need to like do a huge launch for every single app. Like I can experiment it with my friends, and like if it's fun and exciting, then I can advertise it more. You know what I mean? Like one of my apps I built over the summer was like a live. You basically you take photos, and you can also speak to whoever's in your group because essentially you take the photo and everyone in your group gets notified, and once they come to the app to view the photos, you can talk to everyone who's present at the same time. That was more like an experimental app. Like I launched that as well and everything, but that was pretty interesting.
That sounds pretty cool to me. Sounds like
Hmm.
a cool social experiment. Is it still running?
I'm pretty sure we took down the servers and everything, but it was on the App Store and everything. But yeah.
Okay, great. A little bit of a housekeeping question that I'm asking everyone that comes on the show. So right now,
Hmm.
consumer social means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and the term is kind of a mess. One of the goals of the podcast is to essentially consolidate it and make it into something useful. So, what
Hmm.
does consumer social mean to you?
Yeah. Um, Consumer social. Honestly, I think consumer social is anything where people can interact with each other. And I think within consumer social, there's like subsections of like social utility and like social networking and then social entertainment. I think social utility apps are things that like amplify existing social networks. Like, for example, Send It or an NGL or things like that. I think social networks are more like you actually cultivate like a network on the actual platform. Like for example, like Gas App or House Party or Clubhouse, like there's actual network existing on the platform. And social entertainment, I think, is more like TikTok, um, maybe even YouTube Shorts and things like that. Um, I think they're all part of social consumers still.
Okay, multiple people have now made different subsections within consumer social. It's pretty cool and actually unexpected.
Uh-huh.
So you've touched a bit on your background. What inspired you to build your first social app?
My first social app was actually a website, I think, back in like seventh grade. I think I just watched the Social Network movie, and there's like Mark Zuckerberg in it and everything. And then I was like, dang, I want to build something that a billion people use. Like that would be so fun. So I remember Mark Zuckerberg used PHP. So like that same day, I went on YouTube and I searched how to build a social network in PHP, and then like
I love
yeah,
that.
so that was an absolute failure. But I mean my motivations became less I guess less like vain and more like I actually loved the field like as the years went on. But I think that was the initial spark like years and years and years ago.
it's it would be kind of interesting for someone to do a show on how many people started in social because of the social network movie. Because the amount of times I've watched that with my ex co-founder
Uh-huh.
is not healthy.
It's such a good movie though.
And after like all of those experiments, you've managed to be part of an app that was number one on the top charts.
Mhm.
Um, how did you do it? How did that feel?
Yeah, so I wouldn't really I feel like my workout group being number one in the App Store wasn't really like an organic success. as in like it wasn't because of like virality within the app or anything like that. It was more because of the marketing side of things. That was largely because of like TikTok pre-orders and things like that. So once it launched, like everyone downloaded it. It was pretty similar to the way like paparazzi launched as well. Um, and honestly, it did not feel as crazy as I expected because so much of it was based on like the TikTok marketing and things like that. So like I kind of had an expectation that it would go to number one. I've yet to build an app where it organically reaches number one. Like I launch it and this decay factor is so crazy that it just climbs to number one naturally. And I think once that happens, that'll feel like really, really cool.
How did that TikTok marketing look like? What was the
A lot of it
process?
was, yeah, a lot of it was just introducing that. So I actually kind of tried TikTok marketing before that app to no success. But I used to be really shy on TikTok and like I felt really uncomfortable making them. This app, I just kind of threw myself out there. Like, I just told everyone what the app was, and people just really resonated with the idea of a social fitness app, like where they could hold each other accountable. And like the app naturally mapped out to TikTok's like user base as well. It was more like high schoolers who really like were interested in the app. Um, I think TikTok has slightly changed. Like you can still make apps go viral. Like I did make an app go viral like a couple months ago, um, and it might not be as easy as it was like 2 or 3 years ago though. But
What was the app that you made viral a few
like
months
a couple
ago?
months ago, it was called Things with You. Basically, it was like a to-do list for couples. So you add things you want to do with your significant other, and each time you complete a thing, you take a photo of it. I think that went number one in like parts of Europe and not in the US, but in Europe, it went to number one in lifestyle, I think, and then like number 10 overall or something like that. Uh,
Because of the marketing TikTok.
because of the marketing, and then to some degree, like obviously each person who downloads the app will bring on one more person because like it's for couples and like best friends. But largely due to the TikTok.
Yeah, the couples is one of those interesting areas where you at least you know that one user will bring one other more,
Mhm.
but also no more than that. And so you oh, sometimes more than that. So you've built in couples, you've built in workouts, you've touched all those different areas. What are some areas that you think are ripe for disruption in social?
Yeah, I'm not really sure if I view social as like areas that are meant for disruption anymore. Um, I think I used to think of social like that. Like I'd see an app like, oh, Instagram is not really as like it's not as cutting edge as it could be. Like now there's live video and it's not focusing on live video as much. Or like Instagram isn't as authentic, it's not as much for friends. I think that line of thinking leads you to build things that people don't really care about because I think for a social network to succeed, um, like a social network in the sense like a clubhouse or a house party or things like that, which actually cause a cultural shift. I think it needs to really push the limits of like what people are used to mentally. Like if you look at the biggest social networks of today, like at their time, they did something that was like very radically different and even like slightly uncomfortable. Um, mm, like Facebook, like you're adding all your friends and seeing everything about them. Like before that stuff really existed online, right? And then Snapchat, like sending disappearing photos before like people sent that many photos back and forth, right? So I think this concept of like which field is right for disruption is kind of pigeonholing yourself into like it's kind of limiting the area you can build in because you're building off some type of app or some type of field already, basically.
Okay, that's an interesting take. What are three things you've learned from building so many apps?
Three things I've learned. Yeah. Three things. I think one thing is that marginally different social networks don't really, it is really tough to get them to succeed. Like wrapping around, like creating another photo sharing app with like some thin wrapper around it that makes it slightly differentiated from like a different photo app. Like, uh, obviously, BeReal is like a counterexample to this, but like I've seen like a lot of photo apps where it's like you take the photo and you don't see the results before you post it. And I've actually built something similar to that like last a couple like a year or two ago. Um, the things like a photo sharing app where um, I don't know, like you pass it on to the next person and choose who posts next. Like I'd build something like that as well. Like that stuff is like marginally different, and the value proposition is not really clear there. So I would stay away from building stuff that's just like marginally different, a marginally different app with like a slightly greater value proposition than an existing social app. That's one thing. Another thing is, I mean, this is kind of like cliche. It's also just making everything very frictionless. Like I think as a founder, you're spending months and months, and in some cases even years, building your social app. So like you're spending so much time with your app that it seems natural to you that someone will spend like a lot of time with your app as well, right? But most of the time, the way someone is downloading a social networking app is like some of their friend is like forcing them to download it, and like you finally give in. You're like, okay, fine, I'll download it, right? And then you download it, and you go to
Forcing is the right
onboarding.
word.
Yeah, and you get to the main screen and everything, and then there's nothing there. You're like, what the heck? This was a waste of time. You delete it. Like you're not like most people don't go through all these different hurdles, and like they're not as in love with the app as you are, right? The third thing, which I've been recently discovering, is that like um, most of the time, like if you give an app to like a group of people, like they should be able to share it if it's like a good social app with a good case factor and everything. But there are cases with certain apps where like in isolation a user won't use it, but like once it becomes a cultural norm, they're more likely to like participate in it, right? Like it becomes less weird. So they're concerned about like whether something is weird or like cringy, like lessons once the people around them start doing it as well. So that's why sometimes it's a good idea to test with like different schools and things like that, right?
How do you test that?
I'm still figuring out how to do that, honestly. Right now, I'm still trying the TikTok stuff for new apps that I build. Um, I know like other apps did like the Instagram stuff where you make an Instagram account for different high schools and things like that. But I think it's honestly like there's not really like a true formula for it. Like every app is like slightly unique in how you market it. Um,
Yep, I've
I,
done the Instagram thing
yeah,
and failed tremendously.
really. So that didn't lead to any success for you.
Nope, the conversion rates were not that good. It was way too much work, like manually.
Hmm.
It just maybe it was my execution, but it just failed.
Oh, got it. Interesting. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I've never actually tried that myself, but
Yeah, if you manage to make it work, please let me know.
for sure.
And speaking of failures, where's one area, one thing you've failed catastrophically at, where you were like, shit, this did not go how I planned.
I mean, honestly, most of my apps are like that, and I think like the app I built last summer, Give Me Juice, it's interesting where like you take the photos and you can talk to whoever's there. Honestly, like I launched it and like I knew there was too much friction, and I'd gone over like 12 or 15 different iterations of the app over the summer, like different mechanics and different social dynamics and things like that. Like I just could not get like photo sharing and voice to work together, and even like photo sharing within the context of a group, I couldn't really get that to work. So once I launched it, like I didn't really have it in me to market it that much because like I knew the idea was just too much friction. So I
Yes,
learned a lot from that. So
sometimes as founders we do put ourselves in that position of getting to launch and not having the energy anymore. How do you
hmm.
cope with that? How do you keep the flame alive as a founder?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a mental model where before I used to build apps and like I'd think about the app like 99% of it and like the distribution and marketing as like 1%. Now most of the time like I'll start an app, I usually think of like the marketing and distribution beforehand, and that's like 50% of what my thinking, and then 50% like it's like an even split between marketing and distribution and like the actual development of the app itself. So I have energy reserves for both.
I feel like that's a shift that's happening quite a lot and among different people. For
Hmm.
example, people thinking about the hook and the marketing before building apps, people thinking about the thumbnail and the title before doing YouTube videos. Stuff like
Yeah.
that is happening in a lot of different areas.
Yeah, but honestly, I still think if you want to build like a truly like culturally um like significant app, like house party type of thing, like you still have to think about the distribution, but I don't think you really need to be as focused on the marketing or for them to get because like if it's actually that like revolutionary, like a locket was just like locket was such like a mental shift to people. Like you have a widget on your home screen. So they made one TikTok and the rest took care of itself basically, right? Um, but
Yeah,
if you're trying to build a social app,
the founder built it just for him and his girlfriend, right?
yeah, yeah, originally, yeah, um, but yeah,
Nice. But yeah, you were saying something. Sorry, I cut you off.
but it depends on like what type of social app you're trying to build. If you're trying to build something that like grows really big really quickly and burns down, you should be focused more on like the marketing and distribution from the get go. And if you're focused more on like something that you really want to have like cultural significance, I think you can focus less on the actual marketing, at least initially, right?
Yeah. And all of these apps, do you build them yourself? Do you build it with always the same team? Are you jumping around between teams? What is your social
Um,
dynamic?
yeah, all my apps except one I've built by myself. I think the last app I built is like an AI avatar thing for couples. I built the app for that, but then I had like friends. I had like their teammates working on like the actual AI generation and like server stuff and scalability. But besides that, I build all my apps myself.
Okay, nice. So
But I actually
from
one caveat: my work group I built by myself, and like it got to number one. But after we got to number one, like I did add like additional teammates to help like building more features.
how was the scaling process? So because it's one thing to build from zero to one. How does it look
hmm
like to build after you get to number one?
So the thing is, we weren't sustained at number one. Like we weren't at number one in the long for a long time. So like we didn't really face like the same challenges as like an app that's facing like organic virality that's just like continuously at number one. Like we didn't really face any server issues or anything like that. And even if we were like organically at number one, I think nowadays it's really easy in terms of just like if you're using like Firebase and stuff like that, or using like MongoDB with like auto scaling, like it's pretty easy to handle like scalability up to a certain extent, right? If you're at like 100 million users, like obviously you need to change something, but you're not like a million or 2 million users. Like I think a lot of these services are like really good for scalability.
Yeah, it's a common trend to hear founders say, "Oh, I thought it was hard to build from zero to one," and then they get to one to 100, and they're like, "Shit, everything is burning. I have no idea what to do."
Uh-huh. Yeah, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
that's a cool trend. And
hmm
so you build most of the things by yourself. If you were to build the perfect consumer social team, what would that look like? Like, how many people? What are their backgrounds? What are their motivations?
Yeah. At most, I would have 3 people on the team. I'd probably have just like one other person, like if I were trying to build like the perfect team. That way, the benefits of building by yourself is like you can build really fast and whatever comes to your mind you can build, but that's also kind of a negative because you have no one like double checking your thoughts, right? And like you have all these assumptions and you build on top of them. And you kind of have to like fail to learn whether or not your thought process is incorrect or not. If you have like one other person working with you, they can uh, they can verify all your thinking and like make you walk through it and things like that, right? I would just look for someone who's like really down to who understands social, like they've built social before, and they're really good at like just like grinding it out. You know what I mean? Just like iterating and like trying out different things and like willing to experiment. And ideally, if they have some sense of like product and design as well, that would be great.
What's your background in terms of studying? Is it design or
Uh,
development?
or I was a CS major.
CS major. Okay, so that it makes sense that you want someone who is product minded.
Yeah,
So your ideal team is just you and one other unicorn that can do everything by himself.
yeah, exactly. Like it would be fun to work with someone who can build apps from zero to one by themselves, and then like partnering with them would be fun.
Okay, okay. And looking more ahead and at different
hmm
teams, what do you think the future of social looks like?
Honestly, I'm not really sure. Uh, I if I were to say anything, I'd just be kind of shooting in the dark. I really have like no clue. Like a lot of these social things are just like such cultural phenomenons. Like it's really hard to predict, right? Like and things that would work now might not have worked like 2 or 3 years ago, and they might only work in isolation or like during certain like time periods and like people being willing to do different things, right? Or different like technology like enablations. So like I really have no clue.
Okay,
Well, actually, I
because
do have one thought. I think they're like near term thing that I'm starting to see emerge is like the division between like social entertainment and like social messaging. Like I think there might be like a greater divide where like there's like categorically like YouTube Shorts and TikTok and things meant to like entertain, and then the apps which are meant for like you and your friends will become more and more focused on just like interacting with like your close friends for the most part. I'm not 100% sure what happens to this middle part with like you and your thousand followers on Instagram. Like I'm curious what happens there.
it's actually pretty interesting. One thing that no one gave thought to, or at least I didn't, is that YouTube has always been that way. Like YouTube has always been about consumption, even though it is a social app.
Hmm.
And now with other apps following the same path, people are starting to wake up to that reality and be like, "Oh, wait, this is not about interacting with my friends anymore." And
Yeah.
some people are scared of it.
Hmm.
Also, on the topic of future, what do you think will happen to the social landscape if TikTok gets banned in the US?
Um, I mean, I, I would just, I would assume that something like Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts would come to fill that gap. I'm not 100% sure. Like, would people like naturally like shift over to those things, or was it TikTok in the platform itself? Um, but I'm honestly not too sure. Like, it's such a huge shift. Like, it's hard to predict what something like that would actually.
It would be phenomenal to see small apps taking little pieces of it, but honestly, I think that's hard. But
Mhm.
would be quite cool. See the David and Goliath type thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, okay. And in terms of so you built in fitness, my fitness group.
and my
Um,
workout group. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, my workout group. Sorry. Um, how long did that take you to build from end to end? So when did you have the idea? When did you launch?
Yeah, so originally the app was called Goal Group, and that was like a social accountability for any of your goals. So that took like a year. Then I pivoted that to my workout group, and like from like that, once I had that idea to start building that to once I launched it, it was probably around like 4 to 5 months of building. I will say that now the time it takes for me to build an app like has drastically decreased, and like I try to give myself like a timeline of like 2 weeks, like an MVP. Like if I can't get an MVP done within like 2 weeks or like a month, um, I should like really reduce the scope of what the app does. Um, but yeah,
So you go from right now you go from thought to MVP in 2 weeks always.
well, that's not like a hard line, but it's more of like it's like a shift in perspective, right? Like I don't want to spend 6 months building an app anymore, really.
How long do you give it for marketing then?
That's something I'm still like trying to learn, like how long I should market an app. Um, I'm not 100% sure. Like I'm like fluctuating a lot on that. Like whether I should market for like a month or like 3 or 4 months or like when I should stop marketing an app, I guess.
Yeah, because that's one thing that I'm also really not sure about. Because
Mhm.
you see these apps, for example, Be Real in the beginning, it didn't have a lot of traction. It would be really easy for the founders to just say, "Okay, this doesn't work. Let's move on." But they just
Yeah,
kept grinding at it, and eventually it worked. So there's a very thin line there between just not wasting your time and then grinding until you get something.
yeah.
How
Hmm.
do you think, or how do you manage that boundary yourself? I was going to ask, how do you think people should manage it, but how do you do it yourself?
Uh-huh. Um, I think there's a slight bit of like uncertainty to it. Like there's no like set formula for it, and like obviously in the case of Be Real founder, like it's tough to know like what's going to succeed or not. There's a bit of like this guesswork involved, right? Um, so I'm not exactly sure
A lot of
still.
intuition, a lot of guesswork. How
Yeah,
much of
I'd say
what you
so.
build is based on just things that are cool, things that you want to see in the world, and like observations about what other people are doing?
Right now, most of the things that I'm building are kind of like smaller apps, like the AI avatar stuff for couples. That was more like a smaller, like fad type of app. I'm more focused on things that can that could have like good distribution and that could go viral potentially. I'm not really focused on longevity for the apps I'm building right now. Um, so I will say in the past though, I did focus more on like the trends I saw with people and things like that, like the way they're interacting. Now I'm more focused on like what could have really good distribution, and like a lot of people could use like really quickly, basically.
Okay, again, going to the theme of thinking about a thumbnail before doing the video.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Mr. Beast talks a lot about that. He does.
Hmm.
He's the preacher there.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we're getting close to our time here. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you very much for spreading the wisdom. Again, a disclaimer that I'm going to put in every episode is everyone here is just fucking around, finding out. So that's been it from you. Where can people find you and your work?
Yeah, I talk a lot about my work on Twitter. My handle is like Jibran underscore 05, just Jibran and then the underscore 05. You can follow me there and I'll post updates and stuff.
Perfect. If you want to see Jibran's work, follow him on Twitter, follow the Consumer Social Podcast on Substack, and that'll be it for the fourth episode. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you,
Yeah,
Jibran.
thanks for having me. All right, bye.